Let me make sure everybody's on. She's not back. Mm-mm. Good morning, everyone. I know it's our first morning. I think people thought that it was starting at 7. I don't know why it would say 7 o'clock. We will be doing these at 9 o'clock, which is early on a Saturday morning, but that's what people have asked for. So we'll be doing them at 9 o'clock. 2 of my panel guests won't be here today because they're traveling. And so today it will be Brooke. And if anybody else wants to jump on, please feel free to write that in the notes. And I can share with you the link. So, or sorry, not the notes, in the chat. And I will share with you the link so that you can jump on and join this conversation. In fact, I'll just put that in the chat right now. And then I promise you, as soon as we get started, I just wanted to give people enough time to get up and get ready, get moving. So you're fine. I see you.
Okay.
There we go. I'm putting that in the chat. So if you want to join us in the chat, all you have to do is click the link that I'm publishing right now, and I will add you to our stream. This is The Devil and Karl Marx. And it's so funny, when I got my friend Brooke online, she squealed because this is quite the squealing book. Not necessarily squealing out of joy, but squealing because it is so prescient right now.
Well,
To
and
be
it's
reading
truth.
this.
Nobody says truth anymore. Nobody speaks to it hard. And this guy is like, boom, this is why it's wrong. This is what it's done. And there's no sugarcoating. There's no placating. There's no political correctness. It's just solid truth. And hopefully it will help us all like be more active in preserving our lives, because it's not just about liberty. This is about death. Communism has been about death. So many deaths. Okay. But I'm trying to explain why I was squealing.
No, I love it. I love it. So Dr. Paul Kengor wrote this book, I believe in about 2016. It's called The Devil and Karl Marx. This takes place, it starts off, he says in the book that it could have been not just the devil and Karl Marx, but that it should be the devil and the effects of communism, because only the first few chapters, the ones that we're talking about today, discuss Marx himself, discuss his beliefs. And then we will go into how this infiltrated specifically churches. Dr. Kengor is writing as an apologist for the Catholic Church in this book. We're not Catholic. We're not going to be putting in a whole lot of our opinions. We're going to stick to the facts. I want this to be as relatable to as many people as possible. And I'm just going to pull up my notes here on it. But the first thing that struck out to me was Ronald Reagan's quote, which was, "Those who read communism are followers. Those who know communism hate it." That's a terrible paraphrase, but that is
Who
basically
understand it. Those who understand it hate it.
yes.
Mhm.
Those who understand it hate it.
Yeah.
So keep on talking about things that you like while I pull up my notes again, because I
Okay. I'm
went.
trying to find out where this is broadcast so I can forward it to my feed.
Okay, it is on YouTube.
YouTube. Okay.
On my Cara Marcel YouTube.
Okay. Thank you.
It is also on Rumble, and it's also on my Facebook.
Okay. Thank you.
So if anybody wants to go those places and share it, that would be wonderful. And I just need to pull up my notes again.
Okay. Let me share this.
And if you're following along, I do have the shared screen here, so you can see all of my many annotations.
Okay. So
What I'm doing is I'm listening to this on Kindle, and or I'm reading this on Kindle and I'm listening to it on audiobook at the same time. Here we go.
okay.
Alrighty. So Kengor presents communism as a lethal ideology with religious intensity and a massive body count. And that count is enormous. That count is millions of people across multiple continents. Um, what shifts when we treat it as a lethal ideology? So that's really the big question here is where does it change between that lethal ideology um, and the economic account that is bad economics, which is what we're told. Now, the thing about Karl, it's crazy that he's considered this economic genius. Be-
Well, and they're trying to separate what it has actually produced with the people's imagined intent in Marxism. And do you mind if I use an example of something I saw on the streets yesterday
no,
at
go ahead.
parade? So there was this on somebody's front yard, there was this free doggy bags and like a garbage can and doggy treats. I'm like, oh, that is so nice that they're helping supply it for everyone. And I began to think, I bet they think this is what socialism is. I bet it's people looking out for one another, caring for each other, wanting to serve each other, that they think this is what socialism is. This is what we're going for. And they don't understand the dark satanic roots to take away people's lives and the millions that have been killed in this. And so we have this vision of free doggy bags and doggy treats to make everyone's life happier and more giving. And when
Right.
in reality, it's these hidden deaths. And it's these deaths where people just disappear. They disappear and they don't have anyone to even tell that they disappeared. So the numbers are not accurate. And so all of these are estimates. The estimates in Russia, I think, was around 20 million or so. But he said, no, Stalin alone killed 70 million. I believe that was in there. And so it's just, I don't want to overtake your thing, but that's where
Mm.
we're trying to bridge the disconnect of.
No, Brooke, you're right. Because I was listening to someone yesterday who was talking about, they were like, oh, I'm a socialist because I believe that um, teachers should be paid a living wage. Right. So they're constantly just throwing some little piece out and it's not an own. It's not an own. They're constantly saying that this is socialism or this is democratic socialism. And as we move forward in the book, you will find that it's not just that this is democratic socialism. It's that Stalin literally said, "Go to America, change the term. Don't use communism. It has a bad name. Start calling it socialism. Start calling it even democratic socialism." That's like 100 years old.
Well, and we have to understand what's the difference between communism and socialism. I think most people don't understand it, and so they're like, "Oh, I just want people to take care of each other."
The difference is 2 years. That's what my that's what my friends who've escaped it have said. The difference is about 2 years before it settles in and you really realize, holy crap, this is what I did. I do want to jump into so their communism becomes their religion. So the thing about Karl Marx being economic, what did you notice about his life from, and this is kind of in the third chapter where they really start talking about his life, like the results. So I'm going backwards, and what my plan is today is to go backwards from chapter 3 all the way back to how he got there.
Well, it's what his mom and daughter and dad said about him. Like they were just like, he's the devil. And I think that, their fruits right there, they lived with what he was trying to preach, who he had become. And he used to be a Christian. And then he turned and he even said, I have willingly turned and, help my soul. This is where I've turned towards.
Well, and the results of that ended up in two daughters committing suicide, um, an 8-year-old son that he loved very much dying because he lived in utter despotism, to the point that he would not bathe. He he thought that his thoughts were more important than self-care, than actually taking care of himself. He he made his wife go places and beg for his family to have shoes. His family was turning against him. And I think all of this stuff is important because Marxists do. They tend to think, I am so intelligent that these ideas that I have in my head are worth you supporting me.
Yeah,
So,
like my benevolence is sufficient to justify this fatal system. It's my intent is my ignorant intent is enough for you to support my flawed, fatal plan.
right.
And we can't do that. We have to be more intelligent. We have to have more knowledge of where it came from and what it's going to create and what it has created in these last 200 years since he developed it. And just, all the followers after him were just as dark and evil and deathly. But we
So,
don't see that. We don't study this in our history.
no, and that's intentional. A few years ago, some victims of communism, some victims of socialism went to our capital and said, we want our kids to learn these things. And they said, no, because socialism means different things to different people. And there will be a time, but it's not right now. And I think that that should be a massive warning. So, Marx, it's really interesting to me because he has this very strong relationship with God for a so-called atheist. He is very much so he was born into Jewish he has Jewish roots. And he is there's no other word for it. He's a racist. So he has a son-in-law who is part, I believe he said Cuban. And he says he has Negro blood, so he calls him Negorilla, as in gorilla. Um, and he despises Jews. So he's filled with this self hate and loathing. At the same time, he wants other people, and I think this is interesting, he wants other people to affirm him constantly. He cannot not think about himself. So his partner, Friedrich Engels, he loses one of his many, because um, Engels is also a despot and he sleeps around a lot. But he has one woman that he really, really cared about, and she dies. And everybody sends him these letters, and we're so sorry that you died. Marx, his not only best friend, but the man that he sponsors, sends him 2 sentences on, I'm so sorry she died. And then he goes, but man, could I use money? And I think that that's really important to understand because while Marx was not a great economist, his ideas, the way that he lives does kind of permeate the people who adopt his ideas at a certain level, because there's two groups that do this. They're kind of the basement dwellers, and then there are the intellectuals, the kind of caviar set. Um, those who believe that they know so much that they can just impose it on others. And what they mean by they know so much is, firstly, and this is really the main goal, destroy religion.
Yeah, that's the essence of the whole thing. And I like that in the introduction, and everybody, you can get this on Kindle and read the sample and just see it. And it's like the most delicious words, like how they phrase it. He says, the fatal flaw has left an entire generation prey to the deadliest ideology in history. I just love how he writes it. And I love that he spent his whole life understanding this. And so just go in there and read the forward. It's beautiful. Read the introduction. It's free.
If
And
I share this, can you see it? Can you
I
see
thought
it?
you already were sharing it.
I'm just wondering if you can see it larger.
Yeah, so you're in Kindle Library, page 91. I can see that. Yeah.
Okay, so
And
I'm
you
going to go all
highlighted
the way
stuff.
all the way to the beginning, I guess.
Yeah.
Go
I
ahead.
mean, it's nice to start with who he was, because
Right.
he was just, I mean, this is, we've prayed as, so I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. But we had a fast for religious freedom. And I'm like, okay, and that's great. And I think a part of that, to be specific, what does that look like? We have to understand the real dangers of communism. We have to be able to say, whoa, and identify where the threat is. And this is the threat. This is the threat in people believing that socialism, we need to protect their ability to believe whatever they want. But when their belief is that religion is the bane of all existence, that's the root of this ideology, is that
Yes.
government becomes a gang. It's the worst
So
thing rather than the
let me just read this part. Marx did not set out, and this is in the introduction. Marx did not set out to tinker with markets and redistribute some wealth. He sought to radically transform society by changing human nature. He hated religion because he opposed God, the author of human nature. He sided with Satan, as he confessed in letters and ghoulish poetry quoted in the next pages. Ex-communists such as Arthur Koester and Richard Wright came to call Marxism the God that failed. Karl Marx erred not through mere miscalculation, but through sin and heresy. And again, I want to do kind of my best to not lean extremely into religion, because his ideas don't just affect the religious, although they do, very much so. There will be there will be one session where I'll be telling you, really breathe. If you are a praying person, pray before you read this next section, because it gets extremely dark.
Well, it's the battle between good and evil, and that is like, is it good to kill somebody? No.
Yeah.
I mean, it all boils down to how many people have died in communism.
Well,
Like,
it comes down to extreme totalitarianism.
right. But I'm just saying it doesn't really matter what religion you are. It's
Right.
a battle to live or die. And
Yes.
that's the end result. You don't do
Well, and the goal here is nihilism. When his wife dies, he has very little to say about this woman that he spent,
Mm,
you
yeah.
know, from his 20s up until
Mhm.
quite old.
Mhm.
He has very little to say about her. He just, it's basically, let's try to be like her, and into the dirt she goes. Um, and of course his daughters also, like I said, commit suicide. So one of their ideas was that man makes religion. Religion does not make man. Abolition of religion is demanded so that people can have real happiness. Now, I think that this is very interesting, because a ton of people are saying Jesus was a communist. And they really have no idea. They think of Marxism as redistribution,
Yeah.
giving willingly of what you have. But there is no willingly. And Marx doesn't hold back when he calls for blood, when he calls for death. In fact, I will be able to find that quote in my notes here.
Well, that's how he enforces it, and that's the thing, it's all force, and it
Right.
has to be force. There's no choice. There's the first things that stripped are our inalienable rights. They don't exist. We don't have the right to life. We don't have the right to choose to liberty. The government is the huge gang that's enforcing at their own benefit and only their benefit. The benefit of the government is they get the ones with the posh houses and they get the meat. They don't have to stand in line for food. While the rest of the people, and this is documented throughout history, while the rest of the people don't have shoes, they don't have food.
Now we need to know that what he believes in is called the end of history. So what happens when a movement decides existing human nature is the obstacle? You got to think about that. What do
I
you
don't
think
understand
happens?
that.
Okay,
Existing
what
human.
happens when a movement decides that just existing human nature? So what they believe is that you destroy one thing and then you remove that obstacle, then you destroy another thing and you remove that obstacle. So everybody thinks, oh, if we could just get rid of capitalism, we'll be fine. Everything will be fine. We'll live in a cashless society and all will be good. We'll all be equal.
So you're saying they're saying as we exist, we are the problem. But I think we believe
Yes.
that from a religious perspective too. We have to overcome the natural man. So I'm trying
It's
to
not overcoming, it's literally death.
okay, so they're saying people need to die.
Yes.
Okay. I mean, I didn't know that they came right out and said
Yes.
death to all humans on earth, because
Yes.
it seems like how
So when
people
I
say it.
show my screen, can you can am I still there when I share my whole video, or is it an empty screen? So when I do this, am I still in the picture?
I can see the image of your screen.
Okay, but you cannot see me here.
I can see you on this side.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. So yes, it literally turns into wanting death. Let me just pull up these numbers
Yes.
of death,
They're good.
okay? USSR 20 million deaths, China 65 million deaths, Vietnam 1 million deaths, North Korea 2 million deaths, Cambodia 2 million deaths, Eastern Europe 1 million, Latin America 150,000, Africa 1.7 million deaths, and I would say and counting.
Yes.
Afghanistan 1.5 million deaths. The international communist movements, the communist parties not in power, about 10,000 deaths.
Well, look at the paragraph right across from it where it says the 20 million dead, and then it goes down and said Stalin alone annihilated 60 to 70 million people.
Yes.
So these are not accurate. They're the best guess.
Yes.
And I like that the author says, yeah, go ahead and nitpick at this, but the truth is that only God knows, because these were done in secret. But the millions of deaths are documented, and this is the root, this is the essence, this is the end of communism and Marxism.
Right. So this much we know beyond dispute. This was and remains a lethal ideology of boundless destruction. He does have an opinion.
I
And
know, I love it. I'm like, hey, nobody's hiding behind anything here. Most people are like, oh, do you have a good day?
no, there's nothing. It's very, very blunt. Okay. Boundless destruction and stupidity. One needs to think of viruses, bacteria, plagues, disease to approximate this level of man-made death.
Mm-hmm.
Even then, a malicious modern virus such as COVID-19, which placed a world on lockdown in the year 2020, comes nowhere close to communism's fatality rate.
Mm-hmm.
Mankind has survived all manner of evil diseases and plagues, said Ronald Reagan, but can it survive communism? One of the best things about the audiobook is the guy's actually quite a good actor. he has some good voices that he adds in there.
Well, I like it. You have to read the last sentence because I love that. This is what Reagan said.
Okay. Reagan called communism a vicious disease. For good measure, he added that communism is neither an economic or a political system. It is a form of insanity.
Yeah. Like, why do you want to die? Why do you want to lose your rights?
Well, because he's nihilistic. He believes. So one of the things that Marx did when he was younger that I found just appalling is that he hated God so much that he mocked God. Now, again, I find this extremely relevant as we move into the future because there's tons of churches that do nothing but mock God in their services. Drag story hours, well, especially the queer stuff, absolutely, in my opinion, is mocking God. What he would do, he and another one of his friends, they rented donkeys and they rode their donkeys through town, kind of spurting their idiocracy on Easter to mock Christ in this very, very religious town that he lived in.
Okay, so here's the problem with that is like, yeah, he's mocking God. God can take it. He'll get what he's coming. But what he's doing, in my opinion, is he's testing the people. How much of this will you take?
That's really good. Yes.
Will you get up and will you stop me? Will you say, no, not on my watch? Will you mock my God? And they just watch and we watch. And when are we going to stop and say, no? I mean, and I don't know what I think about this yet, but there was a video gone viral of some guy got mad at a kid for staying seated during the anthem, Star Spangled Banner.
Yes.
And so he's like, get up. And everyone's like, oh my gosh, he hit him. And like, what would you have done? and I always try and figure this out. If you saw Marx riding a donkey down the street, where and how would you have stood up and said, this isn't okay with me? Because it was a test of the people's morale. And a lot of times people follow their leader and they think, I guess it's okay. Nothing happened to him. Nobody else said anything. I guess it's okay. And
That's
so, like,
true.
you need
That's true. But in their defense, he was penniless because he was revered as an idiot. So, while there were people, oftentimes that overly intellectual class that were like, oh, those are very good ideas. Many people thought he was an idiot. And some of his friends, as I'm going to read now, they actually said he was satanic. There were times when Marx seemed to be possessed by demons, recorded Robert Paine. Now, Robert Paine was somebody who was sympathetic to him. In his chapter, The Demons, in his groundbreaking seminal 1968 biography of Marx, a prolific academic biographer of Marx and a respected scholar and academic, not expected to level such a shocking charge, Penn asserted of Marx, he had the devil's view of the world and the devil's malignity. Sometimes he seemed to know that he was accomplishing works of evil.
How could he not know? I mean, but
you don't want to make a claim that you can't prove. So, and I think that that's important because it says, I have no certainty that Marx was a Satanist, nor can I confirm whether he was possessed. And again, those are the things that I don't want to go into.
But I want to know how Marx couldn't know. How did Marx not know? He said sometimes he seemed to know, meaning Marx, that he was accomplishing works of evil. How could he not know? I mean, I think one of the things that happens to us is we don't realize what we're believing or what we're doing. Our self-deceit is one of the worst problems. But in the case of Marx, I would think that he had full understanding of what he was doing. But I have to go back to what you said, that they let him go on this donkey on Easter because he was like the village idiot. Nobody gave him any credence, right? And so, but I still want to know, what do we do when we see these things? You can go up and you give the donkey a carrot and say, come here, I have a donut for you too. Come here. I mean, just kind of distract him off the path. It doesn't need to be a full-on whap on the head for not.
Oh yeah. So I'm at the point where I believe in shunning. In terms of, like, I wonder if Marx wasn't actually literally mad, crazy mad, in the things that he believed. There's also, there's a whole bunch of people who believe that they're literally witches. And I'm not sure where I fall on that. I know they're not riding brooms and flying in the sky. So he may have believed that he was a Satanist, but actually been quite literally mad. I mean, he got to the point where when he was writing, he couldn't sit down because he was so filthy, he had butt boils. So he had, at one point, he compares his life to Job's because, my goodness, taking a bath is not a possibility. So he gets boils between his nose and his lips. And he writes about how terrible this scourge is, but he will not do anything about it.
Well, it's funny. It's like you don't acknowledge your own part in your misery. And he seems like one of the most miserable people I've ever studied. And for him to not recognize that he has been creating this by his is like a dog turning to their vomit, right? Like,
yes.
Why do we do this? We all do it at some level for things that we're like, oh, that didn't work. And then you do it again the next day. And that aspect of human nature, we really need divinity to rise above. And he didn't want it. He rejected divinity so that he could even bring himself to less suffering. But he seemed to love waiting and suffering. And,
well, let's grab some of his he seemed to. I'm going to grab a piece of one of his poems. Thus, heaven have I forfeited, I know it full well, wrote Marx in an 1837 poem, one of many explored at length in the pages ahead. My soul, once true to God, is chosen for hell. That certainly seemed the perverse destiny of Marx's ideologies. That statement also seems at least partly autobiographical. Given that Marx was once a believer, once a Christian, and he had once been true to God. In another poem, Marx wrote, "The hellish vapors rise and fill the brain." So again, I think that this at least makes you wonder, was he a little bit mad? Is society following a madman as they promote Marxism? And I want to be really clear. AOC last week said something about, I'm not a Marxist um, because I believe in blah, blah, blah. It's because I'm a waitress. Well, she can be
She's
a
a
waitress, but
waitress?
she's also a Marxist. But she's exactly like him. This man, this I want to skip into kind of where his life goes.
Okay.
This man who says, I'm for the proletariat, I'm for the working man, didn't work. Didn't work.
Yeah.
He pontificated. And not only did he pontificate, but somehow, because he was such a smooth talker, this woman says, Here, take my daughter as your indentured servant. This woman is not paid. She is their housekeeper. Her name is Leechin. And as far as we know, we know Leechin had a daughter with Marx. But what we don't know, and what we are led to believe because he writes about it and plays later on, is more than likely she was forced into her relationship with Marx. His wife Jenny, understandably, was extremely depressed. And Leechin has a daughter, or I'm sorry, Leechin has a son. They call him Freddie. He won't even acknowledge him. So when I say that his ideology is that of a deadbeat, it's because he won't even acknowledge this son. Engels takes the kid and puts him immediately into foster care, but he takes credit. And then on his deathbed, he says, yeah, that was Karl Marx's son. So this man who supposedly cares so much that everybody's adopting his ideas, one, is absolutely a racist, calls his own son-in-law a gorilla, talks about that he must be 1/8 or 1/12 Negro blood, calls him multiple times the full-on N-word. And he writes about the N-word all the time. And he also is extremely anti-Semitic. So he does both of these things regularly. Mind you, this comes down to self-hate.
Yeah.
Because his
So much
family is like rabbis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So there's tons and tons of self-hate. But the thing is that these people who quote unquote hate religion oftentimes are creating their own religion, their own dogmatic, this is the only way, because there's no point where he says, I want to think like this. I want my own little commune and we'll all think like this. Lottie, lottie, dottie. No, he believes it needs to be global.
Well, there seems to be a certain elevation of a political or economic system. Let's call it. People think this is an economic system. They wouldn't call this a religion because religion has been, held responsible for all of the deaths in the Spanish Inquisition and all of that. And I love that they point out that all the deaths in the Spanish Inquisition and others doesn't even come close to communism.
No.
So when you say creating their own religion, I would rather say creating a false substitute for religion.
Yes.
They wouldn't call it that because religion is the opiate of the masses,
Oh, but Brooke, they do, because you get the Communist Catechism. So he literally tried to start this as a religion, and Engels goes, let's rethink this. We're trying to appeal to people who don't believe in God. Why are we writing things in the same way? And of course, Marx is writing it to mock it. This is a man who I would say, in a very different way than Abraham wrestles with God. He wrestles and needs him to not exist. So more than that, they saw it and referred to it, certainly at the initial stage draft, as a literal communist confession of faith before opting for the title that stuck. Think over the confession of faith a bit, Engels wrote. So they actually called it the Confession of Faith, these atheists. So think over the Confession of Faith a bit, Engels wrote to Marx in November 1847. I believe we had better drop the catechism form and call the thing the Communist Manifesto.
Well, especially following where the people are going. Their whole goal is to deceive the people into including
Yes.
themselves like they're doing it. And so, like,
Yes.
what will the people swallow more? It really doesn't matter what they call it. It's like, what will they believe? How do we get them to believe this?
Exactly.
And
It is a manipulation, and this is why
manipulation.
when I see
Yes.
churches promote it,
Mhm.
I'm like, you have no idea. You're literally the dupes and suckers that we will get into in other chapters. But it
Mhm.
says their communism became their religion, even as they scoffed at religion as something for superstitious idiots. And I see this all the time. I see teachers regularly make posts like, not all of my students are Christians. And I'm like, you who teach quote unquote kindness, no, go away, go away. Dogs, sorry. Um, Even as they scoffed at religion as something for superstitious idiots, truly their manifesto has become their catechism, their Bible.
Yeah, no, it functions as a religion. It functions as a religion, even though they don't call it to them. And I think it's so funny. Like they all use, we're going to call you a superstitious idiot. We're going to call you names if you believe something, and nobody wants to be called a name. It's like everyone's self concept is so weak that they'll do anything to not get called the name. And
Yep.
like, you know, it's true. You have to be daily immersed in truth, I believe, so that you just can I help you need we need divine help to identify it, because I think
Yes.
I'm deceived daily, right? And you just pray, say, help me see what's true.
Right.
You need help because they're crafting this based on human nature to deceive us so that we give up everything we have and are, so
Well, and
that
there's
they
a
can
reason we
call
don't study it. There's
us.
because the thing is that all of this evidence is right here. This is why I wanted to cover this book, because the evidence is available, but we're told not to look at it.
Yes.
Right now, people are just, they're calling us Marxists, they're calling us communists. I listened to a man the other day say, indoctrination of our kids, they want your kids out of schools because they don't want them to hear new ideas. But what he doesn't say is we're not teaching those bad ideas. He just, they gaslight constantly. So Marx envisioned an apocalyptic revolution leading to the overthrow of capitalism by impoverished working class. But again, the man never worked.
Okay, so here's the deal. This is the whole essence of why this book matters. He's like, most arguments argue on an economic level. And
Yes.
so if you go back to that sentence, can you go back to where you just
Sorry,
were?
yes.
And
That's what I want to find.
it says leading to the overthrow of capitalism. That's not what it's leading to. Because people are like, capitalism is bad. Leading to the overthrow of our inalienable rights. Because
Yes.
that is the system that guarantees us life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's what he's trying to overthrow. It's not capitalism. But he says it is.
I want to go through what he specifically what his list was.
Okay.
Because I think that if you go to the DSA, you're going to find the exact same things today. So, abolition of private property in land and application, all of rents of land to public purposes,
Mm-hmm.
a heavy progressive and graduated income tax, a heavy income tax,
Mm-hmm.
abolition of all rights of inheritance. Meanwhile, one little tidbit about Mr. Marx is that he went and he begged his father for money to the point that his father writes him this blistering letter of what a loser he is. And then he says, now, if you come and visit me, you know, that would be great. Um, but he again tells him what a loser he is. He tells him, if you come and visit me, that would be great, but I'm not going to continue to pay off your debts. Unfortunately, he does. And at the end of this letter, he signs, I'm dying because of the stress.
Mm.
Um, And Marx doesn't have the time to go to his father's funeral. Even though his father has paid for all these things for him, he doesn't have the quote unquote time. With what? What job? Is he staying at home? There's no job. They could have paid for him to come. He chooses not to come because he's such a self-centered narcissist. And again, I think that this is important to understand, that as we teach Marxism in our schools, our children are becoming more and more narcissistic.
Okay, so as we teach Marxism in our schools,
Yes.
so I want to just I know this isn't the time and place for that, but
Yeah.
I want people when they hear you say that, they're like, we're not teaching Marxism, sorry. So, but I mean, as we're promoting the ideals of socialism, maybe if we
Progressivism. Let's call it progressivism.
okay,
Okay, our schools are progressive.
yes,
There is no place that you can go and type in, "Are public schools progressive?" and you won't find, "Yes, they are." So what does progressive mean? Progressivism means the abolition of private of property and land and
yes,
application of
yes.
all rents.
And that
And
it's evil. It's not even the abolition of it. It's that having more than others is evil. That's the whole wheel
yes,
of power. Like you
yes,
have to have incentives. You have to work with human nature, which is that if you work harder, you'll get more so that you want to. We all know it when we have kids. We're like, hey, after your chores, you get to do this, right?
yes.
We have to work with human nature. If you deny that human nature exists, you will not have a system that functions exactly
No, you're
like
going to have a bunch of Karl Marxes.
and people who don't want to work and won't work. They just want to be given it
Yes,
for free. Like you have to accept that we will work for rewards and that's what we
yes,
want. And therefore you have to reward them. We're saying that's evil. That's the wheel of power. Anyone who's better than another or gets more, I mean, they are being taught that it's wrong to work for
yes.
something you want.
Yes. So let's go. I want to keep going with this. An abolition of all rights of inheritance, confiscation of all property of immigrants and rebels. Who are the rebels, do you think? Maybe people who are making podcasts talking about what's going on? You
Yeah.
think might fit as rebels?
Well, that's the thing is like you think, well, that's not me. And yes, we should get the rebels out, and that's when you want to put yourself in a category and say that's not me instead of thinking that could be me. This could be James.
Yes.
So you're
That's
like, oh,
such
I
a good
better
point.
align with this. I better align with what he's saying, or because I want people to be proud of who I am, even if it's in an errant system, right? And that
Yes.
doesn't function.
No. Centralization of credit in the hands of the state by means of a national bank with state capital and an exclusive monopoly. Centralization of the means of communication.
Mm,
You get boosted off of social media when you don't say the right things.
yeah.
So centralization of this means communication and transport in the hands of the state. Extension of factories as instruments of production owned by the state. The bringing into cultivation of wastelands and the improvement of the soil, generally in accordance with a common plan. Equal obligation to work. Now, what happens here, a lot of organizations, and you'll see this later, they start saying that everyone should have the quote unquote right to work, which means everyone has to work. And if that work is just as they did in Mao's China, having the youth carry rocks from the bottom of the hill up the top of the hill and then bring them down while repeating over and over again how amazing Mao is, the little red book, it's equal obligation to work. If that obligation means that moms must not be in the home because families are a big problem for all of this, then that's what it means. Gradual abolition of all of the distinction between town and country. In other words, having these what I call commie complexes built so that people don't have ownership. There's less ownership, there's more renting. And then on top of that, more renting, there are virtually no rights for landlords. Um, that's where that is. Let's see the rest of
Well,
that.
by abolishing a pride in what you have and even the love of the family, these are
Yes,
all things that need to go down for this to work. You have to have no love in your heart, in your family, in your home, of your home. They're trying to take down love completely.
yes. Well, and he has no love for his parents, which is
Right.
another interesting thing because our kids are, I think it was 60% of families currently have somebody going no contact with them. I think I saw that yesterday.
Yeah, yeah.
60%. Well, that's what happens again when people are told, who's your one person other than your parents? Who's the one person that you trust that's not your parents? And I know this happens, and I know it happens in high school because my niece called me and said, "You're my one person." And she said, "We were taking a survey, and I thought about it, and you're my one person." And I was like, "Well, Your parents need to be your person.
Well, and you're one person. Let's further isolate them.
Yes.
My kids are Black, and so they have experienced racism. And so we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
And I'll say, but also as you consider this experience, I want you to also consider all of the people who, if we were behind you when this happened, we would have been like, like my husband, grandma, aunts, uncles, friends, neighbors, everybody. If we would have been there in that incident and say, look at all the people who love you. It's not one person. It's a
Right.
huge society. It's a community. It's a family that believes in
Yes.
this love that's going to get behind you, instead of saying, oh yeah, I am put upon, I am oppressed. I'm like, don't let that live in your heart, because that's going to canker it. So I want you to think of all those millions of people who want to stand up for you, even strangers. So when they say find your one person, that's intended to isolate.
Yes. Um, so the rest of it is, and I think this is important, free education for all children in public school. Again, when you hear all, you just think anybody who wants it. That's not what they mean. They mean everyone must be in it. They are extremely dictatorial. So, of course, Marx and Lenin and the boys knew that terror would be necessary to implement such a truly radical totalitarian ideology. They understand
Mhm.
full well that
Yeah.
they mean for terror. After all, their philosophy demanded an unequivocal rejection of most basic rights, including property. Stated Marx, the theory of communists may be summed up in a single sentence: abolition of private property. Many Marxists and socialists and democratic socialists today fuss over the extent to which Marx wanted to remove or limited private property. A lot of people will say, well, they're not going to come for your house. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
But in Manifesto, he said, and he doubles down, you are horrified at our intending to do away with private property, they wrote. But in your existing society, private property is already done away with for 9/10 of the population. Now, again, these are not the proletariat. These are these are the champagne socialist class. Marx is just a leech of that class of people. Now his wife was a part of that class, and he could have been, but instead he chose to, basically sit in his basement and pontificate.
Well, they
So,
don't they don't understand that property and food is what we need to survive, because they've never not had it. And
right.
so by saying, "Oh, it's okay to not have a house." Oh, ask
Yes.
somebody who really has been homeless and who hasn't had food. I went to a homeless shelter and I served food there, and I talked to people who were homeless for years, and I said, "How did you get out of it? How did you choose?" And they have wonderful systems in Salt Lake, by the way. They have a home where people who are homeless can go and they work together and encourage each other. They just said, I wasn't ready yet to not be homeless. But I mean,
Right.
there's a lot of fear and psychology of, like, if you take this away, if you take away their security, they'll do almost anything. They'll do what you ask. If you say, just don't take away my food, don't take away my house, doesn't matter. You could take away my livelihood. They're more willing to do what you say if you threaten them with taking away
Yes,
their comfort.
yes. And that's, again, I think the thing we need to understand. We say authoritarian and we need to be saying totalitarian. They mean to take everything. In
Mhm.
one word, you reproach us with intending to do away with your property. Precisely so. That is just what we intend. That is truly radical revolutionary. It constitutes nothing less than a fundamental transformation of human nature.
It gives them nothing to defend.
But here's the big thing for me. We have people. It started with a certain president several years ago saying, I want to fundamentally transform America. It starts with politicians in our own state saying we need to fundamentally transform Utah,
Mhm.
or whatever your state is. So, communism, he and Engels wrote in their manifesto, not only seeks to abolish the present state of things, here's that part, coming back to the whole history, but represents the most radical rupture of traditional relations.
Love. That's love. It's their conquering love to to just bring hate and annihilation.
Well,
And
he didn't,
they
when his mother dies, he doesn't attend, but before she dies, she cuts him off, and he goes to a lawyer to make sure that he's going to get money when she dies. That's his love, and he basically says she's nothing more to me than a bank. So they knew what they were advocating. This is a revolution toward touching on everything from property to the family. Abolition of the family, they wrote with an exclamation, even the most radical flare up at this infamous proposal of the communists. So those are the things that he wanted.
Well, yeah, and that's the annihilation of love. Hey, I have to go in 5 minutes. Can
I
I just
know.
say one thing I want to say from the
Yes.
introduction?
Yeah.
So this says, this is the introduction written by the author. Drawing on documents that have been archived or shelved for decades, these works are hidden, right? That's what we're talking about. Some of them being published or quoted at length here for the first time. People don't understand this. They don't have access to this information. They call me the book banner, right? But this is what they're doing. They're taking
Yes.
away the truth. And then he says, what is included in this book will shock readers, but also alert them to a destructive force, not merely historical and ideological, but spiritual and diabolical. So while they're taking out these books of truth and accuracy about what it is out of the libraries, they don't even have Cleon Skousen in the Davis library, and it's about the Making America, the 5,000-year leap. Everything
Right.
about our foundational documents doesn't exist in any library in Davis School District. So they're taking out all of this stuff that will teach you about the wonderful system of government that we have to protect our life, liberty, and property. And they're putting in these books that are diabolical and destructive. And go to ratedbooks.org and look at these books that are in there. They are literally diabolical and destructive. I mean, there are things I can't say because my kids are behind the door and they would hear me say it.
Right.
And that's what they're replacing truth with, is order to taint the people for their inability to spot and desire truth.
Well, and that's the thing. So Marx is presented. I had a nephew who said to me, "You talk about Marx, but I've never even heard that name." And then he'll say things like, "I shouldn't have to work for the man. Things should be, given to us. That would be fair and equitable." And you sit there going, "It doesn't matter if you've heard his name. His practices have been implemented, his ideas have been implemented." And that's the thing, they won't tell you his name, because when they do tell you his name, when I walk into my class and I start talking to my kids, I say he's the original basement dweller. He went as far as to have, and I'll write it on the board, butt boils. Like, this is true. This is where this guy goes. He's this guy who just loafs around. He must have been mad. And I get really cautious about terms like mad, because everything that they do tends to be a projection.
Well,
So
I
they
think
will
it
say,
might be
we're mad
twisted.
for making this. We're mad for going in, for digging into this content. Why does anybody care? Right? So, and then if they gain power, if these Marxists, which is what we're dealing with, again, go look at his list that I read, all of those things, and then go and look at the DSA platform and you find the differences. You won't, because the Democratic Socialist Party has been around for the last 100 years in America. So when you start looking at that and you go, wow, these are the same things. And as we dig more and more, and I'm just going to wrap up here, as we dig more and more into this book, you will see that this is just as relevant today. They use the same terms today that they used back then, but all of that history was removed with something called the Red Scare. It was all removed. So you're not supposed to know about it, and to even question makes you a conspiracy theorist. Only it doesn't, because the information's here. I love this book specifically because it gives you so much of the notes. It tells you exactly where this is coming from.
And I love that he's a professor. He studied this his whole life.
Yeah.
And most people who claim that they're a communist, lower C, right?
Right.
Is that they have no idea. They
No.
most likely haven't read this.
No, they think sunshine, lollipops, and rainbows.
Mhm.
Like I said, there will be a chapter that has to have a disclaimer because it's so dark that the first time that I read it, I mean, it still sticks in my head. The things that they did were so
Yeah.
atrocious.
Yeah.
And what they say, I'll just give you this and then we will close. What they say is that they loved torturing people because they didn't believe in God, so they could take out everything that they've ever wanted to do because there was no God to punish them. And that's where we'll leave it. You guys, thank you so much for joining. We want to cut off exactly on time. Please, next time, feel free to get into those comments. You know, write your comments. I'd love to address them at the beginning. If you want to join and be on our discussion, I'm happy to send you the link and you can join us. And I'll see you next time.